Hello, in this short lecture I will give you a couple of reasons for the non-existence of God. The first reason why God doesn't exist is because of the fact that God is perfect, so He would have never created such an imperfect world. The second reason why God doesn't exist is that God would have never created the human beings that are capable to do evil and sins and crimes. We can ask the question why God created the human beings from the beginning. If he wanted to put them to the test, then it makes no sense because he would have created perfect creatures that are not capable to do sins and crimes and so on, and then he didn't have the necessity to put anyone to the test. We should also remember that God knows what will happen in the future. So he knew that the human beings will do evil and sins and crimes, so why he created them from the beginning? He could have created, as I've already said, perfect creatures that are not capable to do any wrong at all. That is the from that we can deduce that God didn't create the world, and therefore God doesn't exist. The third reason why God doesn't exist is that God would have never created such a world in which we have so much deaths and murders and so much human sufferings, so much wars, and so much poverty and hunger and so much natural disasters such as earthquakes and floods and hurricanes. God would have never created such a bad world, and therefore God didn't create this world, and therefore God doesn't exist. The fourth reason why God doesn't exist is that God would have never created such a world in which the very existence of the predator is dependent in his ability to kill the prey. The very existence of the lion is dependent in his ability to kill the lamb or the deer or any other animal in order to survive. So such a cruel world where there is so much injustice would have never created by God, and therefore God didn't create this world, and therefore God doesn't exist. The fifth reason why God doesn't exist is that actually there are three monotheistic religions. Monotheistic is defined as a belief in one God or the oneness of God. And the religions are the Judaism, the Christianity, and the Islam. And they are actually contradict each other in their description of how God created the world, and they have different gods also. The God of the Judaism is different from the God of the Christianity or the God of the Islam. So from that reason, because of all those contradictions and differences in the gods between those religions, we can say that none of them is true. They are all false. They are all invention of the human beings. And also that we can say that God was created by the human beings, and therefore God doesn't exist. And the last reason why God doesn't exist is a logic reason. We can say that logically such an entity that is omnipotent cannot exist. Or we can say that such a being that is all power cannot exist logically. And I will explain why. Because we can ask the simple question: if God is able to create such a big stone that he himself cannot lift, if the answer to that question is positive, then we can deduce that God is not able to lift the to lift the stone that he himself created, and therefore he is not omnipotent, he is not all power. And if the answer to this question is negative, then we can say simply that God is not able to create such a big stone that he himself cannot lift, and therefore God is not omnipotent, or God is not all power. Anyway, we can deduce from that example that such an entity that is omnipotent, logically it is impossible to exist. Such a being that is all power, logically it is impossible to exist. And therefore God that is defined as omnipotent is impossible logically to exist, and therefore God doesn't exist. So those were all the reasons for the non-existence of God. Okay? Thank you very much.